It's evident what happened to these folks. It's evident that they were stabbed multiple times. It's evident that their bodies were, cut up. But that evidence is not damning against any one person, right? They have to show who did it.
Prosecutors in Knoxville, Tennessee say that person is the couple's own son, Joel Guy Jr. In addition to the body parts, investigators said they found containers of chemicals in the house and receipts for the purchase of those chemicals. Authorities said they traced one of those receipts to a Knoxville Walmart, where Guy was allegedly caught on camera 2 days before the bodies were found.
They got a laptop, and it has some history on it where he was searching for chemicals that could dissolve bones. That's very incriminating.
The 32-year-old faces 7 counts, including first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse.
Joining us live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, who was in the courtroom for today's dramatic testimony. And whew, boy, Chanley, what a day, what details. It's exhausting for viewers to listen to it. I can only imagine for family members and people in the courtroom. Let's go through it. Let's start with the big moments of the day, things we didn't know until today, including this murder book.
Yes, that was a huge revelation in the prosecution's opening statements. She actually put up a backpack that was found in the guest room of the guy's home. It belongs to the defendant, Joel Guy Jr., and she showed this notebook. Now, the defense, I have to say, fought hard to keep this out of evidence. They wanted to suppress this notebook, and now we know why, because we learned of its contents. She put on the screen some of the excerpts. It's basically a to-do list for murder. It says the tools that the killer needed. It describes what to do with the man, what to do with the woman, to buy some cleaning products. It goes on to say that it turned the heat all the way up in the house. So what did investigators find? It was 95 degrees inside that house. It was so eerie to sit there and listen to what the prosecutor described they found in the crime scene and how it coincides with what is in this almost manifesto notebook allegedly written by the defendant.
Let's listen to a little bit of that part of the opening from the prosecution.
Get plastic bin for denaturation process. And I guess that means for dissolving your parents. Does not matter where they're killed. Just get rid of bloody spots to prevent evidence of time of death. Not the mattress or couches. Get hollow point bullets just in case. Will be seen buying bullets. Just use computer room gun. Check to make sure there are bullets. Last resort. There were no gunshot wounds to the victims. He's not alive to claim her half of the insurance money. All mine. $500,000.
Whew. I mean, there's everything in this thing. You can, like you said, you can see why the defense did not want this in. What was the family reaction listening to these details?
Well, Ted, the opening statements, there were about 14 family members, loved ones of Lisa and Joel Sr. They're sitting, gathered together in the gallery. And as the prosecutor described some of the facts and told the jury what they were going to hear in evidence, I could see the family members, they were hearing a lot of this for the first time also. Many of them would grab tissues and dab their eyes. And as she continued, maybe about halfway through, there were a handful of them that actually had to stand up and leave the courtroom. It was difficult for them, obviously, to sit there and listen to that. And then, of course, after opening statements, most of them took the witness stand to testify on behalf of Lisa and Joel Sr. and what they were like, what they were doing in the last days of their life, their state of mind going into Thanksgiving weekend. So it was very tough for them, I think, all day to sit in the courtroom.
Yeah, let's listen to one of those family members, Michelle Tyler, talking about how her parents couldn't afford Joel Jr.
They had both said, but Lisa said that Joel Michael was going to have to find a job because they only had a certain amount of money. The retirement they had taken out his pension and I'm not sure if that's the name of it, but they only had a certain amount to live on, and they would not be able to afford Joel Michael or paying for his apartment.
Okay.
Things like that.
And on Thanksgiving, what did your dad say to you?
You could, there was a little bit of tension, and so when everyone was inside and it was just,
I'm sorry? I'm sorry.
It was just me and Dad and myself. That was bad grammar. It was just me and Dad. We were out on the porch, and he said that Lisa hadn't told Joel Michael, and that you could feel like that was what was causing the little bit of tension inside the house. That you could feel the tension.
Okay.
It was a little bit.
Did he say anything specifically about them withdrawing financial support from your brother?
That's what he said. He had told Joel Michael about the that they had told Joel Michael about him having to get a job or being cut off, but he didn't. I can't remember his correct verbiage, but it wasn't cut off. It's that they couldn't afford to support him any longer.
Okay.
Chanley, it was very evident that this was a very close family, except for Joel Guy Jr. He seemed to be sort of that outcast that didn't have the same connections with everybody else in this family. Let's talk about, one of the other things that was really a lot of tension just watching it at home was when we saw body cam video. Because we know what these officers are going to find, right? There's a woman's head simmering in a pot on the kitchen stove. There's body parts. What set the scene for us with these videos? How did the jury react, family react, etc.?
That's a great question because, again, the jury sat through graphic details in the opening statement. They knew what they may be seeing in these body cam and crime scene videos that were played this afternoon. And just to remind everybody, the jury is spread out through the courtroom. So there's a handful in the jury box, 4 or 5, and then most of them are sitting in the gallery, spread out, and I can see that they have their notebooks. But when the video was playing, and really everyone in the courtroom was sitting on the edge of their seats going, what are we going to see? What are we not going to see? And I noticed them taking it all in, but again, Joel Guy Jr. is sitting right there by the big screen. So as the jurors are looking towards the video that's playing, they can also have a good view of the defendant himself, who was also taking in the video and seemed to be taking it in stride as well. I noticed note-taking from the jurors. At one point, there was one juror who seemed a little bit uncomfortable or fidgety as the crime scene forensic technician would describe exactly what was what and what this is. But the video was blurred through the most prejudicial parts of it, the body parts, the severed hands and whatnot. That was an agreement between the defense and the prosecution.
Yeah, and I think probably both sides are happy with that because it was so, just imagine if they would have opened up that pot and shown what was inside. Talking about that pot, the severed head in the pot, what was it boiling? Was it simmering? And how does that affect the timeline here of when he was allegedly in the house when he left?
Yes, that's something that is an important detail that we're kind of waiting for the prosecution to uncover, because based on court documents and based on the timeline that the prosecution put forth in opening statements, Joel Guy Jr. allegedly left his parents' home the day before. His car was last seen around noon on November 27th, the Sunday before the Monday of the welfare check, by a neighbor. His car was seen there, but he leaves abruptly, as you could tell by the crime scene, the way it's left. Allegedly has a cut on his hand, and that we haven't quite heard the details about that yet in evidence, but based on court documents, that's what we know, and that's what he maintains. So he would have had to have left the stove on with the pot boiling overnight for hours and hours, Ted. And of course we see all the heaters that are set up throughout the house that he had turned on. He turned on the thermostat all the way up. It was 95 degrees on the second floor. So whether or not it was intentional or he forgot to turn off, allegedly, the stove, that's yet to be answered.
Let's listen to the prosecutor talking about the crime scene. After
the limbs of these people were removed, the killer placed them separately into two 45-gallon blue Sterlite containers. You will hear testimony and see evidence of where that took place, and you will learn that in the master bedroom of their home, plastic sheeting was placed on the floor, and these blue plastic bins were placed on the sheeting. The killer put Lisa's body parts in one, and he put Joel Sr.'s in the other. And then he covered them with a corrosive substance and left them there to liquefy into some sort of diabolical stew of human remains.
When the prosecutor says that there's a movement in Joel Guy Jr.'s face, I don't know if he's holding back a chuckle or a laugh or what. From your vantage point, talk about his reaction during all of these gory details being let out to the jury.
What a memorable moment in that opening statement. The opening statement, that phrase, the diabolical stew of human remains, that was powerful. You could feel that resonate in the courtroom. Now, throughout the day, watching Joel Guy Jr., he really took everything in stride. There wasn't anything really overt reaction-wise that I could tell from where I was sitting in the gallery. And again, I'm sitting right next to, close to where jurors are seeing. They have the same vantage point. In fact, most of the jurors, about 9 of them in the gallery, only see maybe his profile or the back of his head because of how social distancing is in the courtroom. But you can still see his body language, his movement. You can see him move around. You can tell that he's watching the screen or talking to his attorneys. We did notice a couple of yawns throughout the afternoon and drinks of water. He took lots of water today, Ted.
Okay, and of course he does have the shield. What are we expecting tomorrow?
Tomorrow, we're expecting more forensics, testimony about the physical evidence they found in the crime scene. Remember the prosecutor this morning saying that evidence was found in every room of that home. And I have to say, Ted, this morning as I sat in there waiting for court to start, officers brought in cage after cage, big cages and carts of physical evidence, 5 total. They lined the back of the courtroom full of evidence bags, physical evidence. So it'll take a while for the prosecutor to go through all of that and introduce that into evidence, and that's what we can expect to hear most of the day tomorrow.
Okay, Chanley Painter, thank you. You can see the trial unfold live here on Court TV starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Time.